Namaste, yogis. How are you? Welcome to Meet a Yogi with my special guest, Kara Thorsen. Hi, Kara.
Hi. Thanks for having me.
Thank you for coming today. Kara is coming to us from Montreal, Canada for our international Meet a Yogi week. She is our third guest in our tour of the world. We've gone to India, now to Canada, and then Sunday we'll be going to Finland with Petri Bernstein, who is a philosopher of the breath. So join us for that one if you're catching this on the replay. Today on Meet a Yogi, Kara and I are going to be discussing 3 key takeaways for your immersive practice. I want to tell you a little bit about Kara before we begin our conversation. Kara is an Iyengar yogi, as I said, in Montreal, Canada, the owner of Yoga Equanimity. Kara believes strongly that the embers of yoga burn deep and that those embers need to be fanned so that the flames can rise into the dullest parts of the body and mind to bring new light to the practitioner and to the world. Her studies, her practice, and her studio and her teachings all join to serve this belief. And her teachings all serve this belief, as I said just a minute ago, because I'm repeating myself. Her online journal, Why Not Suffer with a Smile, provides a record of her journey of discovery. So thank you so much, Kara. And I think this little bio really shows your intensity as a teacher. And I think that it's one of the things that makes you so special. Today we're talking about creating an immersive practice, and I'm especially excited to hear from you about how you do this, because I want to know how you take that intensity of your practice into an immersive experience.
Well, I mean, for me, I guess for me, yoga is an all-immersive topic, and I have to put myself into something completely, and yoga has become that for me. It's my barometer, it's my clock, it's my radar for everything. It tells me everything that's going on. So an immersive practice, and I hope I did this the way that you were hoping, but so the keys,
you can't really do it wrong, because we'll just go wherever the conversation takes us.
Exactly, right? But the keys to an immersive practice. So my first thought on that was, come to your practice with a purpose. And whether it's a consultation, whether it's a heartbreak, a chronic or an acute pain, some sort of conflict or joy, come with a puzzle that needs pieces. Have an ends to discover the means. I don't know if you know about Abraham Hicks, but a friend of mine is into Abraham Hicks. And so I was listening to them, and one of the first, they have a list of 3 or 4 things that you do, and contrast causes us to ask. And I like that. So have that contrast with you when you come to your practice. And so you can come full so that you can get empty, or you can come empty so that you can become full. So that was my first.
So are you, and I just want to, so when you're saying this, are you saying that you come sort of with an intention, that you set an intention before your practice of what you're hoping to discover?
Yes. And I mean, I find that my practice changes a lot. At first, when I was first starting to practice, I kind of just practiced first because of the scoliosis. So there was a physical outlet that I was looking for to change. And then I discovered that moved into the mind, that moved into all these different things. And so then I came up with different things. I was 22 when I started practicing. I'm now 47. And so in those 20 some odd years, life has continued, and at some points in very grim ways. And it was always when I would come into this room, and it didn't matter if I was teaching or if I was practicing, that's when everything went away. Everything was gone the moment I started a class, or the moment that I started my practice. Practice was more integrative. Teaching was the escape, but practice was more integrative. It gave me boundaries for whatever issue I was dealing with. But teaching, it was like, for that hour and a half, that 2 hours, that 4 hours, however I was teaching, everything went away. And then of course it came back, but that's why I had to stay with my stable practice. So now I find that, I call this my room of interrogation, because, that's where.
I love this about you, Kara. You're not like, hey, this is my sanctuary. You're like, this is where I get interrogated.
Or this is where I interrogate, but this is where I find out everything I need to know so that I can be of service to everyone in that room. And so it kind of just happens. And I don't mean to say interrogation, but that's exactly what it is. Like, I see physically in a person, oh, okay, I have to be keen there, or I have to ease up there, or I have to harden up there, or I have to. So the first thing for me, because an immersive practice to me doesn't mean just in this room, but how do I let it be every part of my life?
Oh, I love that definition of it.
And so for me, yoga it's how I tell time. It's how I judge my honesty. It's how I judge my dishonesty. It's the parent that I am. It's the lover that I am. It's the friend that I am. And my practice is what puts me on the platform to be anything that I am.
Absolutely. I agree with that. I'm kind of curious, just from a practical perspective, is there something that you do when you come to the room and it's time to begin that takes you into that? Is there a ritual that you have that you perform at the start that sort of helps you to?
I always do the 5 invocations that we do with Fike in the summers in Blackcomb. So, some days it'll be rainy or cold when seasons are changing, and I'll put the X-Files on, and, I'll have the X-Files going the whole time. And that, I come to that in another point, but, the X-Files will be going all the time, or, Garrison Keillor, a Prairie Home Companion, something that'll be provoking thought, but I will always turn everything off and be in silence for the invocation. The invocation is the moment that I harness it all in, invite it in, and then I figure, okay, let's get it on.
So, and just, I don't know how long it takes to give that invocation, but it's in Sanskrit, yes?
Yeah.
And you're doing like a chanting in Sanskrit, basically a ritual, a prayer.
Yeah.
That you begin your practice, and that's the way that you're setting the boundary between the world outside and the beginning of your practice.
Yeah, that's a nice way to put it. Yeah.
We call that, with Eric Schiffman, he calls something like this an opening move. It's that sort of, thing that, usually, and with Eric, we start with meditation, which is sort of really is what you're doing, that sort of boundary. And then the first thing that you do is what he calls an opening move, like in chess, where you have these sort of set openings.
And that's beautiful. It's
bring you into your practice. It's sort of like, well, you don't, one of these things will get you there. It's just your starting point. But, the meditation sort of starts you in with it.
I like that, because, that's why people laugh at me all the time, because one of my favorite things to do is practice and have the X-Files on. And it's because that's kind of like my prayer, my opening move. It's where it brings it in. It's where the thought goes in, the dialogue goes in, everything starts just going. You sort out all your problems. It's like reading the Yoga Sutras over and over again. Each time it means something different, because you're at a different point in your life.
Yeah, and you see it all differently each time. So you begin with your invocation, and so then I think that sort of gets us through that first point. So then let's continue to your second.
So my second point was, again, listen to the radio or have a book, and translated to what we can understand is that means have an inspiration or a thought, to create an introspection, and keep a journal to track your thoughts for data collection. So more than likely I'll have my journal right on hand, so that if something comes up, I can write into it and just track a thought. But I like to come in with something, or have something be stimulated. Sometimes I come in with no thought. I just come in to do my practice, and a thought comes, and I think, oh, that was where I was troubled. Oh, yeah, there's the response.
That was the thing that I was looking for all along.
What have you? And so that was, or I'll be reading a book and it'll stimulate a thought. Or, I really like listening to Prairie Home Companion or Vinyl Cafe or something while you're practicing, because it's like that flow. It gives you the opening moves. And I really like that because it sets the mood for wherever you're going to go.
It's interesting to me that you actually, I wouldn't imagine this with you, that you are actually listening to TV or something while you're practicing, just as it sounds like almost in a way it distracts your mind. This reminds me of, I have one of the teachers, I don't talk about her enough, but she's my Kripalu teacher, Helen Heffer, profoundly impacted my practice and my experience of yoga. And what we used to do at the start of every class was we would have a conversation, where not really a conversation, each of us would speak on the topic. She would introduce it. She'd give a reading of her own writings that from her practice. And then we would each speak in turn. And then everybody would say, thank you. There was it wasn't a conversation each would share, but the reason was not to hear each other. The reason was because you couldn't shut your mind off. So your mind got to come to class and it got to have its say, and then done, close the book.
That's interesting. I don't always practice with something on. There's many practices where it's just complete silence. It's just me and my practice. And for many, many years, it was like that. And then, something changed. Maybe I was too distracted, or I couldn't have silence. I don't know. So I needed to have a filter, or maybe I was just watching and started my practice, or who knows. But it's not necessary for me to have that, but I do enjoy that.
It sounds also like you like the voices of it, that it's something about, I like that, like, for example, when I'm driving home from work, I prefer to listen to like the news and voices rather than music.
Yeah, I love listening to language. I love to listen to articulation and how people speak and how they use words and how they put things together, and the clarity of speech, and then to know, okay, action and speech, and do they match? And, I guess that's my driving force, is to ensure that I'm always running a parallel line, that whatever I say, I'm actually doing. And so I guess that's maybe, why I listen to the words, why I like to have something, something to either draw out that inspiration or draw back that inspiration.
It's fascinating. I think it's just such an interesting way to practice and such an interesting focus. And I can see it, in your speech, but also I can see also that similarity. You're saying that you start with that invocation, and again, tuning into the sound of your voice and letting that bring you and carry you into your practice.
Yeah, and I'll tell you, every time I do my invocations, I hear Fike in my head. And so, I hear him chanting. And again, that just brings you back to the base. It's like, okay, he's with me.
Yeah. I have a course that I'm working on called Strong Links, and it's really about the fact that, that we are meant to carry on the teachings of our teachers, that if we do not teach, that we break the chain of teaching, that it's important. And I think that bringing your teachers into your practice is a way of honoring their work, and also, showing that you are a conduit of their teachings.
Let's hope so. That's a big, those are some big shoes to fill, but in some small way, let's hope I'm there.
Yeah, absolutely.
But and journaling. Journaling is really important. Keep your journal on you.
Talk a little bit about what you do with your journal. I'll share a little bit about how I journal as well.
I mean, it depends. I usually have about 5 journals going at a time. One that I keep on hand all the time that is in a small one, and I call it my genius notebook. And so I'll just write down thoughts if I'm out on the street or what have you. Then I have my notepad on my phone that's always going. I have the essays that I write for the online journal, Why Not Suffer with a Smile. And then I have my personal journal where I sort out all the muck in my head. And then I have my professional journal where, if I'm in the room, say you've given me assignment to speak about, well, while we have our session, I'll think, oh God, what am I going to do? So get in the practice room, bring the journal with me, and something will provoke, something will stimulate a response. And so that's what I'll write in my professional one. My professional one is all about yoga equanimity, how to improve it, what I've done. Did I like this? Did I not like this? How, here, there, everywhere.
Absolutely. I use Evernote. I'm crazy about Evernote.
Okay.
It's on my phone and it automatically transfers to my desktop, and I can actually do recording text to speech to text. So if I'm in the car, I can actually just hit the little microphone button and it'll take a note for me, because that's where I always think of the best stuff.
Yeah.
But for my practice in my personal practice, there's a certain kind of wire-bound journal that I use that I get them at Barnes & Noble. And I have, many of the same type of journal. And it's next to me when I meditate. And I was taught, by Eric, that when you're meditating, that's, sometimes these great ideas come into your mind. And the real purpose of putting them down is, A, to catch them, because you lose those great thoughts if you don't, but B, also to get them out of your mind.
Yeah,
so that you can clear your mind, because there is this period where there's sort of a sediment that's sort of settling.
Yeah.
Before you can really get to that place where the thoughts clear. And it just kind of helps you to just comfort you that you're not losing those great thoughts.
Yeah, and that's exactly why. Yeah, because sometimes the clarity comes when we least expect it. Those moments of lucidity where it's like, oh yeah, that's what, or that's the kind of person I am, or oh wow, I definitely partisan during that argument and didn't think about it. But that's where we figure that out, and when we write that down, we can address that when the moment comes. There's many of an apology that has come out of my yoga room.
And I think that, people who aren't journaling, it's important to keep those notes and also to go back to your practice later on. Now, do you use stick figures when you're doing asana practice?
In what sense?
Do you actually use like yoga stick figures to record what you're practicing?
Like, do I draw them out or
Mm-hmm.
no?
Okay.
No. As for my practice, and why would you ask that?
I'm just curious if you record, like let's say at the end of your practice, do you write down what you practice?
What I did? No. I don't know that I've ever done that before. I would write down sequences of fikes, and I would, and then I would practice that. But I don't know that I've ever done that about my own practice. Interesting.
Do you actually practice, sequences that have been given to you primarily, or do you try to, discover your own, or a little both?
Yeah, I do both. We have in our form, because of the way my teacher was taught, and Fike Beria is her teacher, we had a whole syllabus that we practiced for our whole teacher training and our pre-formation to develop our practice. So it's years of progressive practice. And then also the first 4 years of our teaching, we're also given a syllabus that we need to teach in class. And I mean, it's really remarkable when you think about everything he did to make everything true and integritous to the method, and let the body progress and keep everything yogic. I find now I kind of go into the room and I have an idea. I know it's a forward fold week. I have an idea of what I'm going to generate, but then I see what's happening in the room and I think, oh, I got to slow it down, speed it up. Maybe I had a drop in that was inappropriate for that class, or maybe I had something different happen. It's like, okay, got to move it around. But I have a general idea. Do you need to get him? Or
no, I'm good.
And but I don't necessarily formulate a true sequence.
I understand what you're saying. So you have a little things that you've been taught, and then also things that you're doing on your own to explore.
Yeah. In my own practice, sometimes I'll use Fike sequences religiously. Sometimes I'll put them away and just get into my own practice. And then sometimes I go back to his, or I'll look at my notes from Mano Uso and I'll do a practice on Mano Uso's, or I'll look at my notes on Prashant or Gita and do a practice with their notes as inspiration. So I kind of take it from everywhere, you know, and just let those thoughts come, go and get in the room with a puzzle.
You've studied with, and then exploring what they're trying to bring to you.
Yeah.
That's wonderful. So now why don't we move on? So we have a sense of now progressing into the practice, starting with that invocation, and then now that we're moving through into, you know, actually what you're physically practicing, recording your notes as you're inspired, taking things also for your professional thoughts, that here's what I'm going to write for my blog post, here's what I'm going to take to the studio, as well as just your notes on what's happening with you personally and your experience of your practice. So as a teacher, you're always bringing the practice back out.
The only time I ever write down sequences is if I'm doing a workshop. Workshops, I always write down a sequence. I always have something that I'm bringing to that class. But for my personal classes, where I'm very familiar, you know, but yes, workshops always, I make a sequence. Okay, so my third point for immersion was patience. So much of our practice is patience. It's waiting and reflecting. And so don't chagrin these moments. Investigate them and search for your truth. Be a sadhaka. And that's it.
That, as Sanskrit means for people who might not be familiar.
Yeah, it means a seeker. And you know, it's one of my friends just gave me an Osho book, and I don't know if you're familiar with Osho. I wasn't familiar. I mean, I knew who he was. Everybody knows who he is, right?
Yes.
But let me see if I can find it. Damn, I think it's in my room. Hang on, I'm sorry.
I'm just going to come on and let people know that if you're watching this on the replay, would you please hit the like and the subscribe buttons here? Would you comment? Because that helps this video to get shared out to other people so that other people can see it. We really appreciate that. We're trying to get the word out. We put our time and effort into this, and we want other people to see the work that we're doing. So please help us to share this work. Okay, Kara, when you're ready.
Share the work, but also help us get topics that you're interested in. You know,
yes.
Know what you want to know so that we can troubleshoot all together.
I'd be interested also in hearing other people's, you know, what they're doing in their own practices and their thoughts about the things that we're saying. Does this resonate with them? How did they begin? You know, how do you begin your practice if you're watching? And how do you know, how are you recording? What are the ways that you get into your practice, and what are the ways that you create that immersive state? Are you watching TV? Are you listening to music? Is silence necessary? You know, what is it that helps you to find that? I think it's wonderful to share these ideas.
Yeah, concentration, yeah, everything. So this is from Osho, and it's, you cannot be truthful if you are not courageous. You cannot be loving if you are not courageous. You cannot be trusting if you are not courageous. You cannot inquire into reality if you are not courageous. Hence, courage comes first and everything else follows. And I think that is so beautiful, and exactly what we do in our practice as sadhakas. We're getting that courage so that we can question, and we can love, and we can inquire, and we can be trusting, and we can find our faith. And so this is my platform for all of that. That's where I get my courage. And when it's depleted, I can come back. You know, sometimes your courage gets stamped out of you and you fall apart. But then you can, and that's why I say you can come in empty and get filled back up, or you can come in full and get emptied out. And both are
really like it's such a beautiful journey that you've taken us on, because now, you know, with this idea of courage, that you're returning back to the world refreshed and recharged. And, you know, and I think that's what's so compelling about yoga to me, is that it's not just nurturing, it's transformative.
Yeah.
And to me, other healing work that I've done is nothing else has the transformative power of yoga to come in and find this something new within myself that was always there, but I just needed to be revealed.
Or wasn't ready to emerge or what have you. Yeah.
Yeah. And then to bring it back out into the world. And I think also we've talked in this call not only about it happening for yourself, but also as a teacher on behalf of other people, and out of honor to the teachers that have brought their practice and done the same for you.
Yeah. Yeah, that inspiration. And that I really liked. I was mentioning John Schumacher's article, and his first one was have a toolbox with one tool rather than many tools, or I forget how he said it, but his meaning was go around and check different yoga studios and then find one that resonates with you and stay there. And if you're going to be happy there once a week, then go there, because there's far too many, it's spasmodic the way people just go to a yoga studio and don't have any necessarily loyalty to it or a teacher or a practice, or they just kind of want to explore. And this can be good, but I remember for me, that was a really important step when I gave up my teacher in New York to go through my teacher training with Marie-André. And I knew I had to do it because she was not going to tolerate me. It was going to be even harder if I didn't. But I also knew that if I wanted to become a teacher and she was going to be my teacher, I needed to respect her as that and take her teachings seriously and give up everything else in order to really give her a chance to be my teacher and to be that part of me. And there's absolutely zero regrets in having done that.
A part of you. It just becomes, I think that's really when you dedicate yourself to study with someone, then as far as being able to carry it on to other people, it's not about memorizing what they've done. It's about really integrating an aspect of their being into yourself.
Yeah.
And then literally bringing that to other people. And I remember I studied with one teacher who had I've actually studied with a couple of different teachers like this, where they have studied, like I studied with a woman locally who had studied with Swami Bua. And I believe that she studied with him for about 40 years. This is an interesting yoga teacher in New York City who could his big claim to fame was circular breathing. He could actually blow a conch shell for an hour. Like, it's insane. And I wish she would teach it to me. I asked her, can you teach it? And she didn't feel like she could teach it, but apparently a lot of musicians would come to him. And he also reportedly lived to be 127 years old, which I think he may have gotten caught in a lie. But maybe he for real did, who knows? I don't think they could document his age, but he had lived a very long time. But the weird thing was that after studying with him for so many years, I really still felt like she was parroting him and didn't really get it. And I studied with another woman she had her own wonderful presence, but I kind of felt a similar thing. She was a Kundalini teacher, and also kind of a similar thing where it's like, I'm only going to repeat and I'm not going to sort of own this. And so, just because somebody studied a long time with a teacher doesn't mean that they themselves have truly stepped into their own teachings and carried their teaching forward.
Yeah, I agree. I've seen that as well. And I remember when I was a student in the first assessment that I observed, because when we do our assessments, we have 8 students that come in that we're teaching, and then the assessors that are also in the room. So I remember being a student for an assessment. That's part of our work going into teacher training, so we have the experience. And every single one of the teachers that was going for the assessment, it was like, ding, 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 what they said, there wasn't much. and granted, this isn't a fair thing to say because the assessment's very stressful, and which is why we do the fish technique, so that we understand we're trained like geishas. If everything goes wrong, we're still carrying on robots, because we've trained. But I did find, like, wow, where's the fluency? Where are you in this? What are you bringing to your class? And it was interesting because
mimicry is a start of learning, and I think we need to have more compassion for that. There's, when you're first learning, you don't have your own voice, and you just have to mimic, and that is just part of learning. So if you're a new teacher and you're watching this and you're like, I haven't found that, you will find it in time. But at first you start with mimicry, and you've really discussed that that's what your teacher gave you, like something really good to foundation, something to copy.
Find your voice through your practice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Then you won't find your voice. But if you are practicing, if you're not practicing, you're better off mimicking and just become someone else. But if you are practicing, you'll find your individual voice and you'll put that into it.
And so I think just to sum up some of the points that you've made during this call was, first of all, that you want to begin with something that separates your practice from the rest of your day, an invocation, something that sort of, I think of that first thing, Patanjali, now we begin the practice of yoga. It's saying, like, now. Yeah. It's now, and something that says, like, we're starting now. This is the beginning. Then as you go into it, that you have ways of recording, ways of sort of allowing your mind to be present and also to sort of let it sort of peter itself out as you practice, so that you can come to a state of really just being present to what's happening. Mm-hmm. And then at the end, bringing that practice back out, knowing that this practice serves a purpose of helping you to become something new and recharge, so that you can serve people in a new way. Yeah. Do you want to, did I capture that well?
I'm super happy with how you captured it. Perfect.
Well, Kara, I want to thank you, and I also want to give you a chance to let people know how they can get in touch with you. So can you share your website, your Facebook page, and other ways that you like to be in contact with people?
Yeah, absolutely. We're at yogaequanimity.com. You can reach me at kara@yogaequanimity.com. That's my email. Facebook is super easy as well, Yoga Equanimity, and you can find us on there. And it is equanimity in the French. So you have an E with an accent circumflex to the circumflex to the right. And the end E also is the same. And, I guess that's it, or you can Google Kara Thorsen and you'll find me, and then you'll be directed everywhere else.
It's a wonderful Facebook group because you've been sharing. I love the videos that you've been sharing in your group of the classes that you're teaching, the work that you're doing.
Yeah, they're fun, huh?
How are you doing this?
Just on the phone, doing them in time lapse, because I figured, let's show who's coming here to practice. Let's show the diversity of the people that are here. Let's show the diversity of the classes that go on. And they've been
fun. There's a setting on your video for a time lapse. It's pretty neat. I love it. It's a lot of fun to watch.
Thank you. Yeah, thank you. And it brings a 2-hour class to like 31 seconds. So
I love that. I wish
it's funny. It's like, okay, how long did that take? We were really in a rush. So we did the whole thing in like 31 seconds.
Well, thank you again, Kara. And if you're watching us, please make some comments and let us know what you thought about the things that we shared. And please join the Sadhana Facebook group. It's the Sadhana community for yoga teachers and enthusiasts. We also have a page, Sadhana Community, SADHANA. Please, if you're watching this on YouTube, like, subscribe, share. We really want our videos to get out there. And thank you so much for your time. I really value it and I appreciate it. Namaste.
Yeah, me too. Thank you.